Quite a few years ago, I was in a meeting of church pastors and leaders. The moderator asked for a secret poll of how certain we were saved, ranking ourselves 1 to 10. 1 would say we weren't very sure at all, and 10 would say we were totally sure. We wrote our number on a small piece of paper anonymously. Out of about 100 people, most of which were pastors, the most frequent number was a 6, which is what I wrote. Only 4 people wrote 10, and only 4 wrote 9. Only 2 or 3 wrote 1. Most votes were 5, 6, or 7. This tells you most people's assurance of their salvation is not very high. And over the past 20 years, I've asked other people this question. Results have been about the same. Today I would rate myself at a 10 because the gospel is so much assurance of our salvation. Salvation or being born again is the most important aspect of the gospel. After all, we can't get to heaven without being saved, now can we? The Bible is clear we must be born again, which means being saved by trusting in the finished work of Jesus on the cross. Now, most people have lingering doubts about their salvation. The thought is, what else must I do to be sure I'm saved? In gospel reality, it is not doing anything that gets us saved and gets us to heaven. The gospel is clear. It is by God's grace that we are saved, through our faith, and even our faith is a gift of God. Salvation is not by our works or what we do, so none of us can claim any credit for it. Paul goes on to say that God chose us in himself before the foundation of the world, and also before the world began, in 2 different places. You see, God is all-knowing. Our salvation is not dependent upon us doing anything at all. It is dependent upon us believing God and trusting him enough to simply live life in the reality that he says is true. This is what the gospel does for us. It shows us that knowing that we are forgiven and redeemed by Jesus is all we need to live with God in eternity in heaven. Now, the problem is that the first impression of Christianity that most of us have is Sunday school, where Moses and the 10 Commandments are often presented the very first thing. Jesus isn't presented till later. In the first thing we hear is the law. This points the finger at us and makes us feel responsible for our salvation. There is no second chance for a first impression, so this first impression often sticks with us for a lifetime.